Our next speaker is Bernie Finn, and I remember when I was speaking at a state school's constitutional convention where there were these students assembled to consider the issue of constitutional change to become a republic, and there was a speaker from Western Melbourne. I've forgotten her name, but anyway, I was debating her in front of these students, and she said, "Oh, and of course you must remember that in the referendum Victoria voted yes for a republic." And so when I, of course, pointed out to her that although Victoria was the closest result, but did in fact vote to retain our system, she was greatly embarrassed, and the students were audibly laughing. So that was very funny. But of course, Bernie Finn, a member of the upper house in Victoria, who has spoken previously to us. He was on a panel, I think, at the last annual conference, but we've never heard from Bernie taking his own session in a conference, and I'd like to make him welcome today.
Thank you very much, Jai. You didn't tell me when you invited me to speak this afternoon that I would be following Lloyd Waddy. Thank you so much indeed. It's made my day. I can't begin to tell you. Lloyd, that was brilliant, and I won't repeat what you said to me when I asked how I would follow that, but I will do my best. It is a delight to be here in Wagga Wagga. I was told a couple of weeks ago that it is Wagga Wagga, it is not Wagga. So I have taken my instructions on that, and it is a delight to be here. It's been a very long time since I've been here, and I had the perfect opportunity in trying to find the RSL here to have a good look around Wagga as I drove the streets for about the best part of an hour. Following instructions that were given to me by a number of passers-by who didn't seem to know where the RSL was either. But anyway, that's the way it goes. Yes, we'll sneak back across the border sometime tomorrow, I'm sure. My mother, God rest her soul, was a great one for manners. She was one who believed that that manners didn't cost anything. She's one who really impressed upon us, my brother, my sister and I, impressed upon us the importance of being polite. She believed that to say please was important, and she believed to say thank you was also important. So, with that in mind, and keeping her memory in mind, it seems appropriate for me today, when considering 60 glorious years, to say thank you. To say thank you to God for giving us Queen Elizabeth II. To say thank you to Her Majesty for 60 magnificent years. And to say thank you for a system which has withstood the test of time and has provided Australia with a system of government which is second to none in the world. Now, Lloyd more than touched upon what I was going to say with regard to how the Queen has fulfilled her duties over the last 60 years. What an extraordinary individual. What an extraordinary human being she is. To have been in the public eye for 6 decades, to put up with all the nonsense that the media dish up to her on a very regular basis, to put up with all the nonsense that we hear from various parts of her realm, from diminishing numbers of Republicans. She has done that, and with a good deal of family pressure too of recent years, of course. She has done that and has come through and shown her total dedication to the commitment to her job and loyalty to her people. As Lloyd said, is there any other leader on this earth that we could even put in the same sentence as her? She is, she has been, and I hope for a very long time will continue to be, a great monarch of Australia, and one that we can most certainly look up to. I tell my daughters, I have 3 daughters for my sins, and I tell them that if they want somebody to look up to, they should look up to Her Majesty. I have one daughter who has a red tinge in her hair, and I warn her about looking up to somebody else with a similar tinge, because that would not be a desirable thing at all. But I tell them to look up to Her Majesty because she has delivered in spades what every parent would be proud to see their child commit and to carry through. Now, I don't want to seem that I've been looking over Lloyd's notes, but the fact of the matter is that despite the fact that Her Majesty is a magnificent human being and she has done an extraordinary job, the system of government that we have in Australia, our constitutional monarchy, would survive, would thrive, in fact, just fine without her. The fact that she has done such a wonderful job, the fact that she's such a magnificent human being, is a bonus. It's a bonus to each and every one of us, because the system of government that we have in Australia is not about the Queen. It's not about Camilla, despite what the Sunday papers might think. It is not about Prince Charles' ears or the fact that Prince Harry might sometimes take his clothes off. It has nothing to do with any of that at all. What the constitutional monarchy is about is Australia. Here am I, Bernard Thomas Christopher Finn. A few generations ago I might have been throwing bombs in Ireland. But here I am today. Indeed, if my great-grandparents hadn't come to Australia all those years ago, I might still be throwing bombs in Ireland, you never know. But here I am today, as Irish as Paddy's pig, an Irish Catholic who also, just for good measure, has another great-grandfather who was a German. So how's that for a mixture? Didn't have much hope, did I? So here am I today, vowing and supporting Her Majesty, and most importantly, Australia's system of government. Because I want the same opportunities, the same freedoms for my children that I had and that my parents had. Because I love Australia. I don't want Australia to go down the path that so many other nations have. I don't want Australia to be shown around the world as perhaps some of the other nations have been shown of recent days. That would be beyond the pale in every way. So the strength of our system, it goes beyond personalities, and it is a gift to each and every one of us, a legacy to pass on to our children and to our grandchildren. And we have an obligation, each and every one of us have an obligation to ensure that we defend and we protect the constitutional monarchy in Australia, because it is about Australia and nothing else. Now, I speak at a lot of citizenship ceremonies. Coming from the west of Melbourne, it's a very, very high migrant area it seems like hundreds of countries sometimes. I go to citizenship ceremonies and there are black faces, there are yellow faces, there are all sorts of faces from all over the world. And I speak to them and I say, why have you come here? Why Australia? Now, why should we ask, but why are people giving Indonesia a miss on their boats and wanting to come to Australia? Giving Malaysia a miss on their boats and wanting to come to Australia? Well, it's pretty clear, isn't it? You know, the generations of migrants that have come to Australia, the asylum seekers that are still begging to come to Australia, the refugees in the refugee camps that are waiting patiently to come to Australia, the migrants who have come legally to Australia have not come to Australia because they want to see Collingwood do well in the finals. Nobody wants to see Collingwood do well in the finals, I would suggest to you strongly. They have come here, go Tigers, next year, they have come here because we have something that they didn't have at home. We have a thing called freedom. Something that I'm sure here many of your brothers, fathers, uncles have died for, to protect. something that we cherish, something that is so important to each and every one of us, so important to the future of this nation. The right to decide where we live, the right to decide how we live, the right to decide sometimes who we live with, the right on so many fronts to make our own decisions, for the better or the worse. You know, I'm in politics, and we have elections, and sometimes I'm very, very happy, and other times I'm very, very sad. And I was up in the Northern Territory a couple of weeks ago for the elections up there, and I thought on that occasion I was going to be very, very sad, but it turned out I was very, very happy, and that's what it's all about. The people in the Territory on that occasion, they had a choice, and they made that choice, and it wasn't what the experts thought it was going to be. Just like 99 all over again. It wasn't what the experts thought it was going to be. And they threw out the government up there, and they put a new one in. Personally, I hope they do the same thing again next year. But that is the choice of the people. And going back to the referendum in 1999, that too was the choice of the people. Because, and my recollection on this is clear, we had movie stars, we had various celebrities, we had political dynamos like Malcolm Fraser and Gough Whitlam. We had millionaires of various backgrounds telling us that, the Republic is the way to go. Australia has no future without the Republic. Well, Australians on that occasion said, well, we are a free nation. They made that point very, very clear at the ballot box, that Australia is a free nation, and they made their decision very clear in the face of all of these experts, all these people that are so much better than we are, so they think. In the face of all these people, the Australian people said, no, we want to keep our constitutional monarchy. And it's wonderful to see that if that referendum was held again today, the majority for the monarchy would be even greater. Would be even greater. And when one considers, at that time, the only place that voted for the Republic was Canberra, doesn't that tell you a fair bit about the Republic? Doesn't it? No, I hope there's nobody here from Canberra. I could be a bit of strife later. I might leave very quickly. There are always people here from Canberra. You can't get away from them, can you? Good to see you here. The last 60 years, glorious years of Her Majesty's wonderful leadership, steadfast leadership, well, it's saved us as Australians a great deal of pain and suffering. It saved us from President Eddie Maguire. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? If Eddie Maguire was President of Australia, how big would the presidential palace have to be to fit him and his ego in the same room? How big would it have to be? What an extraordinary prospect. What an extraordinary prospect. And then, of course, there was also the prospect of President Paul Keating. Now, I have been strongly of the view, and I have presented this argument in the Parliament, that the only reason that Paul Keating wanted a republic was because he wanted to be the first president. I think a lot of Australians thought that too. And that's one of the reasons the republic was rejected in 1999. The last thing that Australians wanted was another dose of Paul Keating. Thank you very much indeed. Or some might even want to go further, because you've got to remember that the base instincts of many of these Republicans is just an overwhelming hate of all things British. That's what it's based in. Makes no sense to me, but that's what it's based in. So in order to remove that British influence, it may well be that some Republicans, to keep us happy maybe, compromise maybe, and I have heard it suggested, that we may introduce an Australian-specific royal family. King Malcolm of Double Bay, perhaps. Rose Bay, I don't know, one of those bays up there, they always get me confused. But that would be something that, no, I think we'll give that a miss. But that's something that we may have been subject to if we had not had Her Majesty. Then, of course, Her Majesty's reign and our constitutional monarchy has saved Australia from a good deal of instability. Instability that we often see in the United States, for example, when the two houses of Congress can't agree. We've seen over recent years, I think on 2 or 3 occasions, the entire country grind to a halt. No public servants being paid because the Senate and the House of Representatives in Washington, DC cannot agree. Or indeed the Congress and the President cannot agree. The whole place just shuts down. Come to think of it, there's a fair argument for that, I would have thought, in certain instances. But over here, it can't happen. And it's interesting to hear so many Republicans argue that the greatest argument that they can put forward for a republic is what happened in 1975. I suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, here today, that the greatest argument for a constitutional monarchy is what happened in 1975. What would have happened? What would have happened to this nation if we had not had Sir John Kerr committed to doing his duty? Sir John Kerr is a great Australian hero. Despite the fact that he has been demonised by the left, despite the fact that he's been demonised by many in the media, he is a great Australian hero. And it's interesting, when you hear the word hero bounced around, they talk about footballers being heroes and all sorts of people being heroes. My view is that a hero is somebody who knows their duty, who knows the repercussions of doing, knows what the repercussions of doing their duty will be. They know that it's not going to be an easy path for them, and they do it anyway. Sir John Kerr did that. Because you've got to remember, Sir John grew up in the Labor Party. He knew what the Labor Party do to rats, and he knew that he would be branded as such. So he knew, he went in with his eyes open, but he did what he did in the best interests of Australia. And that's all we can ask any of our leaders to do. And Sir John Kerr, knowing what was coming, fully knowing what was coming, he did it anyway. And of course, he copped it, as he knew he would, but he did Australia a huge favour, and he did his duty. People say, oh, well, that was the Queen interfering. That just goes to show we need to be a republic because that's the Queen interfering. Well, I beg to differ. Gordon Scholes, the Speaker of the House back in 1975, actually rang the palace. How's the Labor man ringing the palace on this occasion saying, excuse me, would you do something here? Somebody should remind Paul Keating of that occasion. And the palace's response was, you Australians can sort this out yourselves. It's not Her Majesty's role. She has a Governor-General, you have a Governor-General, sort it out yourselves. So that was it. I mean, is there anything that could be plainer than the palace itself saying, you have your own system, you sort it out? We are an independent nation, a free and independent nation that was proven in 1975. Again, in 2010, different situation, but again, we had a situation for some weeks where we didn't know who was going to govern. Some might suggest 2 years later, we still don't quite know who's going to govern. But at that time, we did not know who was going to govern. Would it be the coalition, or would it be the other coalition? Would it be the Liberal National Party, or would it be the Labor Party? We didn't know for quite some time, until Rob Oakeshott made up his mind. Wasn't that worth waiting for? Now, in a number of other countries, you would have had rioting in the streets. You would have had the banks collapse. You would have had the entire system in tatters. But not Australia. Because we had a Governor-General. A Governor-General who was overseeing the whole process. An independent umpire. An independent umpire who was able to say to Tony Abbott, can you get a majority? Tony Abbott said, no, I can't. An independent umpire who was able to say to Julia Gillard, can you get a majority? And she was able to say yes. No, I don't know if he'd been in the majority, if he could get out if he could. But at the end of the process, we had a Prime Minister. Nobody got all that excited about it. Nobody, in fact, I didn't get very excited about it at all, as a matter of fact. But nobody was rioting in the streets. It showed just how much our system of government works. So it's not just 1975, but as late as 2010, after the 2010 election, it showed just how well our constitutional monarchy works. The other thing that Her Majesty's 60 years has saved us from is the prospect of finding a new flag. Now, the Republicans will tell us that they have no intention of changing the flag. Yep. If you believe that, you will believe anything. I remember, well, I should tell you, I have a tie at home. It is an Australian flag tie, and I wear it 3 times a year. I wear it on Australia Day, I wear it on Anzac Day, and I wear it on Remembrance Day. And some years ago, I wore it on Remembrance Day, which happened to coincide with a sitting day of the Victorian Parliament. And I wore that tie into the Parliament, featuring very loudly, and very proudly, I might say, the Australian flag. Well, the howls of derision and abuse that came from the other side of the House left me in no doubt, and very quickly I might say, that given half a chance, our flag would be trashed by the Republicans. Don't believe a word they tell you on that score. They will get rid of our flag. That's what it's all about. It's about symbols. And our flag, it represents who we are. It represents where we are. It represents so much about it. It is, in my view, to see the Australian flag in full flight, one of the most beautiful sights in the world. And we must never, ever condone anything which will undermine that flag or attempt to change it. But a republic will do just that. And if anybody tries to tell you that a republic is just about minimalist approaches or anything like that, no, the flag's gone. We get a republic, the flag's gone. Simple as that. I can give you an absolutely clear assurance about that. Now, as much as the referendum result of 1999 gave us unbounded joy, and I needed unbounded joy on that occasion because I'd lost my seat just a couple of months before that, and it wasn't all that difficult, it wasn't all that easy, rather, standing on a polling booth, I can assure you, just a couple of months after all that. We should be prepared to fight again, because they'll be back. These people will not give up easily. The Republicans will not give up easily. They think they have a God-given right to run this country. They think they have a God-given right to do whatever they like in this country, or that is, they would if they actually believed in God. A good number of them don't. But they think they have some divine providence that gives them an authority which is much greater than ours. As I said before, these people think that they are so much better than we are. They judge people's worth by how much money they have in the bank. They judge people's worth by what sort of car they have in the driveway. They judge people's worth by how big their house is. They don't judge people's worth on real value, on the basic value that we all have. And they don't respect the right that each and every one of us has to express our opinion and to have it heard. And they don't do that because they regard themselves as being so much better than we are. Let me tell you something, they're not. They are not. They are the same as us. Yes, they might be more painful. Yes, they might be more annoying, but they have the same rights as the rest of us. And I have challenged Republicans, and I think, yes it is, on the 20th of October 1992 was when I made my inaugural speech, sorry, my maiden speech, inaugural, I'm getting PC there, my maiden speech to the Victorian Parliament, to the Legislative Assembly. My recollection is in that speech I said that I supported the constitutional monarchy, but if anybody else, Republicans specifically, had any system that was better, I would be very happy to go along with that, because I want what is best for Australia. Now, that was 20 years ago almost, 20 years next month, and I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for the Republicans to tell me what they have that is better than what we have now. And you know why they haven't told me that? Because they haven't got it. They don't have a system that is better than our constitutional monarchy, because our constitutional monarchy is the best system of government in the world, bar none. Bar none. How long have I got, Joe?
Till half past, but if you'd let some time.
Right, I'll wind up now then, because we might have some questions, we might not too. We'll see what happens. I can only say to you that those Republicans that I have discussed with, and I have discussed with a number of Republicans, people from Eddie Maguire to Steve Vizard to Phil Cleary, interesting chappie, and I've asked them, right, we know what you want, we know what you don't want. Would you be kind enough to tell us what you want? And they can't tell us. They don't know. They can't agree. One Republican will tell you they want a direct election of president. Others say, well, they want a minimalist approach. Others have got something else altogether. So they can tell you what they don't want, but they can't tell you what they do want to replace it with. That's not good enough. Australia is too important to be thrust under a bus in that way, because that's what would happen. If you get rid of our monarchy and you don't know what you're going to replace it with, it's like throwing Australia under a bus. Not on. Not on. Australia is far too important for that. As I said to you before, the reason that I support the constitutional monarchy is because it is what's best for Australia. I love this country. I grew up here. My kids are growing up here. I'm hoping for generations to come. My family will grow up here. And I want them, and I want every other Australian to have the same opportunities that each and every one of us have enjoyed. We all have different stories, but each and every one of us, I'm sure, will sing the praises of a country which has allowed us to get on, has given us the opportunity, and has protected our freedom. I want what is best for Australia, and the constitutional monarchy is far and away what is best for our most beloved country. Thank you.